Hello, everyone. Welcome to Technology Management Unit number 6. In Unit number 6, we're going to be talking about the supply chain management, but not in the traditional sense. We're going to be talking about it in the technology side. We're going to be talking of how now companies, what's the value of implementing technology in the supply chain. Okay, so for that, here, for example, I want you to watch this video to see an example of how, for example, warehousing automation is happening. This, for example, removes a lot of the workforce, makes it more efficient, and in the end, we have operations that are more constant. It's a non-stop operation. Machines don't get tired, machines don't complain, machines do their job, and yes, of course, they break down, but I mean, it's not as significant as compared to when we have people working in there. So, I mean, in this case, we see the positive things of technology, especially in the supply chain, where things nowadays have changed a lot. Things are possible because of technology. So in this case, for example, when we talk about the e-commerce, e-commerce is possible because of technology. Why? Because the moment that you go, let's say, to Coupang and then click something, then already translates into a lot of information. That information that clicks, it goes into check already whether there's inventory in the color and the size that you want, what is the nearest facility that it has it, how long it takes to be sent, etc. And then already you have in, let's say, less than 5 minutes, an overall assessment whether your order can be fulfilled or not. So that involves a lot of communication between many different platforms. You'll say like, oh, we only communicate to Coupang. No, it communicates to Coupang, Coupang to the supplier, supplier to the logistics. There's tons of shared information. So this cannot be done without technology. So let's take a little bit of that. So what I was just talking just now precisely is the supply chain management, which has been already optimized, right? So and here we have to manage all the flows of information, we have digital business applications. So here, for example, you have an image here of how information flows, how we have to make sure that we share the data accurately, and how we have standardization of data. None of this can be done if the data is not standardized, if we don't have a common platform, if we don't have a common language. So let's put it in a simple way as the information systems nowadays are trying to use the same language. Not as a programming language, but the language that we have in terms of how we handle the stock and how we handle the order, the sales, etc. So everyone is talking the same thing. So imagine that in this case, in a supply chain, someone's talking German and someone's talking French. They don't understand each other. So that is precisely what creates data silos, because we're not talking the same. So we have to, rather than say, okay, now we all speak French or now we all speak German, no, we create a new language that perhaps accommodates the needs of everyone. Okay, very good. So for this one, we have we need to understand where the information is going to flow. Is it going to flow to the direction of the consumer to see how we're going to move all the materials to the consumer, or the other way around? Perhaps we're going to produce based on what the consumer wants. So in one side they say, let's try to put the materials, let's try to put the final product into the market, and expecting that the consumer will consume it, and then we'll just through information monitor somehow how's the inventory and how much more we need to produce. And in the other one, we will say that is the other way around. We're not producing anything, and the consumer comes and pulls information. Okay, so we need, like for example, the case of Uniqlo. Uniqlo is expert on this one. Actually, they use RFID for their stores. If you ever go to Uniqlo and buy something, you will see that their tags have RFID. So anyways, for them, they produce, let's say, 10,000 units of purple sweater. Okay, so in this case, they monitor how is it. If they see the sales are good, they keep on producing more. If not, they will just stop the production. Okay, and then change to new products. So you see the rotation of products comes very often, precisely because of this downstream supply chain. Okay, so It's very different from other companies that they say, okay, we'll just monitor how we continue selling. If we don't sell it, we'll just put it in discount and that's it. So it's different. That's why Uniqlo has a competitive advantage, because in the end, rather than producing and selling at cheaper prices, they try to minimize the sales, that they are not producing any profit for them. So anyways, all of these processes, whether it's to the one direction or to the other, we will call it an efficient consumer response, ECR, where we, like I said, we can fulfill the orders to the fastest and the most efficiently. Okay, very good. So when we're talking about this supply chain, we're gonna be talking of the vendor managed inventory. So this is example that I was giving you about Uniqlo is precisely how it works. We need to understand the vendor at the point of sales, how many pieces we have, how much revenue we have created, how many orders we have, and we go pretty much to follow this how to say this chart in here, where we have the vendor. Like I said, we ship the orders, we receive the orders, we consume, we sell, we replenish, generate more orders, acknowledge orders. So it becomes a cycle where all the information and all the materials are flowing. So this is something that has changed a lot over time. So because previous time, when we didn't have this access to all technological tools or vendor management inventory, which is in electronic systems or information systems, it happened that we had a lot of stock, a lot of surplus, and we didn't know that until maybe the end of the month, or maybe the end of the year, which was very troublesome. So nowadays, we're talking that companies are working on a weekly basis. What is produced, what is consumed, where we need to stop, what we need to restock. So in this case, this has become very, very efficient. Okay. The second thing that also we need to understand when we're talking about all these ERP systems and vendor management inventory, we also need to talk about logistics. So logistics is pretty much how we move all the materials. And this becomes very critical because when it comes to operations, warehousing is very expensive. To have all the materials in a warehouse stuck in there or moving them is expensive. I can say that logistics account for very, very large percent of what the final product cost. Most of the final product cost accounts for the logistics, moving all those materials and having in stock and so this has helped a lot. Technology has helped a lot because in the end, we know the inventory that we have, we push it only when it's needed, or we pull it only when it's needed. So we minimize a lot of the costs, and companies are becoming more efficient because of more optimized logistics. So in this case, like I was saying earlier, we have push to the customer or pull from the customer, which I already have explained it. So in here, we see, for example, the use of information systems, which is, in this case, we have when we push to the customer, we have a more limited information about the different suppliers. So when we push to the customer, we have more limited information because there's still a lot of data silos, meaning the supplier, the manufacturer, distributor, retailer, and customer are still somehow isolated. But when we have a system that is pulled from the customer, we see already everybody has to be connected. So in this case, when we have the push to customer, we talk of more traditional approaches of, yes, we have an information systems, yes, we have tracking of the inventory, yet we're not connected to the manufacturer, yet we're not connected to the distributor, yet we're not connected to anyone, right? It is just, I need more of this. Okay, I'm going to produce X amount of sweaters, push them to you, push them to you, push them to you. End of the month, you tell me how much I sold. And that's it, as compared to the other system where you see everything is connected. And then of course here we use more integrated systems. We know when we hear, for example, the customer is already ordering, here the manufacturer and the supplier, they know, or the retailer, let's go to the consumer. The retailer, he has a lot of sales. Supplier and manufacturer already know which products are selling good and they are ready for the next shipment, rather than waiting until this one, when retailer at the end of the month says, oh, okay, can you send more? They started to produce at that point of time. In this one, retailer already end of the month, by the end of the month already the new supply is there. It doesn't take any long. In the original system, it still took maybe 1 2 weeks, 1 month to replenish whatever was not sold. Okay, so here let's talk a little bit of the value chain. So when we are doing already, when we are linking all these supply chain activities, we create a value chain. So let's look, for example, here at the cloud gaming services, and you see how they create a value chain, because in the end, there's many companies that are benefited out of these services. So in this case, for example, when we talk about the cloud computing ecosystems, we talk of the cloud provider, the CPU servers. There's companies that are benefiting out of this because there's the servers that have the video games. There's the video game companies itself, or the game publishers, which we have them in here. But for that clouding service, we also have internet providers. We also have these cloud gaming services. And then, of course, how we access to those ecosystems, which is through your TV, through your Xbox, through your phone, etc., etc. So you realize here how all the information starts to be shared and has to be shared, and this creates a value chain. So everything starts to be linked and they cannot live without each other. Okay, very good. So when we're talking about the supply chain, we also need to talk about the value stream. So in this case, with the value stream, we look at the supply chain. Here, for example, we have a supply chain and we look at the suppliers, the customer. Again, we go exactly through this: supplier, manufacturer, distributor, retailer, customer, and we will try to see where we can generate value through technology. So let's say, for example, if for me it generates value to understand where are my trucks and where are my shipments and how they are moving, if that information is useful for, let's say, for the distributor, then of course we can implement some technology that can track already my shipments, right? So anyways, the value stream, like I said, we look at all the areas of the production. In this case, for example, there was, I think, the case of Zara, if I'm not wrong, that they started to use RFID also for the tags, not for the tags, for the fabrics themselves. So in this case, they started to monitor all the fabrics that they are using throughout their process, and then for them it created value because they also understood where the clothes, where the fabrics were used, were stocked, etc., etc., and they could replenish in a much more effective way. So again, we're using technology to make the processes more efficient, to make them faster, to make them more accurate. And overall, information is power, because the more information that we have, that means that we can do it in a more accurate way. Okay, so again, in this value stream, we will look into the critical management, which is a problem solving task, which is, in this case, we can use technology to solve very specific problems. In this case, for example, I don't know how much is my production, so, or maybe I have some errors into my production because human cannot see it, and so I have to go through a machine that checks the quality of the things and so on, and that takes some time. So maybe I can have a machine that is checking the quality, or maybe I can do the design or so. We use technology in that sense to generate value. We also have the information management task, which is, I have a lot of information. So what happens if, for example, in the problem solving task, I have the problem that there's quality with the production, and I have that information. So on the second one is, what am I going to do with that information, right? So because this is one of the biggest problems right now of digital transformation, which is we have a lot of information, but we don't know how to use it. It doesn't conclude into any managerial actions, and that is a very big issue. And then we jump to the third one, which is a physical transformation task, which is, okay, so we have a problem, we generated information, we use information, and then we transform the whole system. So that means that if I see that there's a problem in the production with the quality of the product, I have the information when it's happening, at what time it's happening, under what conditions, then I go and transform the machine in some certain way, or the operation, or the supplies, or whatever it has to be done. Okay, very good. So this one I have, as I've said before, we have to do a value chain analysis. Like I said, from all the actions that we have, they have. Okay, let's go to the process of the supply chain. We do certain actions, so we need to generate value in them. Okay, so for example, the moment that I start to increase the quality, like I said in the previous example, of a certain product, because now I have a machine that can detect any errors as quickly as possible, that means that that machine already is generating value. Why? Because we don't have any waste. The moment that we don't have any waste, that generates value for the consumer. In which way? Because if I don't waste, that means I don't have to increase the prices of the units. Because every time that we waste something, let's say any material or so, someone has to recover that cost of losing some material. So am I gonna pay it from my own pocket? Meaning I'm gonna sell my products still cheap regardless it's costing me a lot? No, I'm not gonna sacrifice that. I'm gonna pass always that cost to the consumer. So in this case, rather than passing to the consumer, if we're saving a lot of money, we pass those savings to us, and then of course the consumer keeps on paying the same, and then of course we generate more profit. So again, in this case, we have to assess the information intensity of the value chain. We have to understand what information we have, how we're going to use of it, what technology is suitable for implementing so that we can generate value. In this case, we determine the role information systems in this industry structure, whether we can also connect that information with the suppliers, with the vendors, with distributors, etc. We identify where this technology can create competitive advantage. Like I said, for example, in this case, we were talking about the production, but it can be, for example, for a company like UPS or FedEx, where they have information systems that track all the packages throughout the whole movement, through the whole logistic process. So in this case, for example, they are generating competitive advantage because they are able to tell the consumer where is their package when, right? So in this case also we can investigate how information systems might spawn new businesses, whether there's information that prompts to new ideas that we can develop for the business. And then, of course, we develop a strategy for taking advantage of the information systems. Like I said, we identify, we find out where we can create value, we implement them, or we create a plan for implementing them, and then we change the whole system, and then we do a digital transformation. This sounds very easy in 5 steps, but in reality, it's not that easy. In reality, first of all, people don't want to change the way the things are done. Second thing, changing the whole system sometimes involves a standardization of information, data, and processes, which takes a very long time. And sometimes managers think that it's too expensive to do it, but they don't see in the future what are the benefits of that. So in this case, also we have the value networks. I'm going to put myself in here. So in this case, we have is the links between organization and strategic and non-strategic partners that form its external value chain. So in this case, we can generate value for ourselves, but the moment that we start linking the suppliers, distributors, etc., we create a value network, right? In this case, we have a value network. This one, for example, is a value chain and a value network as well, right? Because other people get benefited out of our information, out of our way of doing business. Okay, this one I'm not gonna go through this one because it's pretty much the same. Okay, so here we pass already towards moving to the virtual organization. We have to understand that in previous times, when technology was not so advanced in terms of supply chain, companies used to acquire other companies in order for sharing the information. But nowadays it's becoming different. Nowadays, we have virtual organizations and virtual transformations and virtual integrations. So that means that rather than acquire another company, we just share our systems, and that's enough. That's enough to keep us communicated. I don't need to acquire another company. I just need to work in a different level with them, which is in a virtual way. So there's steps for that. In order to reach a virtual organization, we have to start from the very first, which is individuals. We should give the individuals access to the systems remotely. Then from there, there's also teams, then operations, and then the virtual organization. Means we have already made into a cloud all the information, a secure cloud where we can have all the information about the company. That is another big issue of cloud computing, which is sharing or leaking of information. We have to make sure that it's safe and secure, and we are not leaking anything that can be critical. Okay. Anyways, like I said, in this one, we have restructuring the supply chain. It can be vertical integration, which is, like I said, previously we used to integrate other companies to our company, and now there's virtual integration, which is more on the technological part of it, which means they don't belong to me physically, they are not next to me, but in the virtual world they are connected to me in every single way. Okay, very good. So then in this one we have to think of, when we are thinking about data flows, we have to understand that we need to restructure the supply chain. We need to work in very different ways as compared to the traditional ways. So that means that we have to make sure the information flows smoothly. When the information doesn't flow smoothly, it causes information asymmetry. So when that happens, here, for example, I have that the supermarket is asking for a certain number of fresh produce, right? So in this case, it's passed to the warehouse. The production says, okay, we need to produce X amount for this place, and then there's food waste, right? Why? Because there's enough information asymmetry. It means here there's a very big issue between the demand and the supply. There's a huge gap of information. So the more accurate it is, the more likely we're able to read the market. And the market is saying we only need X amount because people is only consuming on these days, on these times, at this rate. So in this case, rather than sending to this supermarket, it has to be sent to somewhere else. Okay, so very good. So some of the benefits that we have of the e-supply chain management, first of all, is the increased efficiency. The processes have become more efficient. The supply chain becomes way less complex because in the end, like I said, everything is an open book where you know where's everything, right? This data flowing makes it very easy to read where everything goes back and forth. If a system is still working traditionally, sometimes we don't know what's going on. And if there's a problem in the supply chain, we are not able to understand how to fix it because we don't know. Like I said, there's too many areas where the problem can come from. Like I said, we have the data integration that helps to the flow, and also we have reduced cost through outsourcing, mostly because, again, now we have all the information, we know what to do, and we can pass all those processes to someone else. And the same thing as for innovation. When we have a good supply chain working well and is very efficient, we have more time for understanding where else we can create value for the consumer. So anyways, let's talk a little bit of RFID and the Internet of Things. So in this case, like I said, we have, for example, technology as the RFID that helps us on the warehousing. So in this case, the warehousing and in the whole, throughout the whole process, because in the end we understand where the information, where all the packages are, or where the different clothes are, or where the certain product could be. So in this case, that works very well. The same thing as the Internet of Things, because in the end we understand in an electronic warehouse, there's robots, there's machinery that is reading and understanding how the process are done. In this case, I'm showing you in this video. You can just quickly browse through it, and you don't really need to watch it, but you will understand better how RFID works. One of the only issues of RFID is somehow the frequency. Sometimes one of the biggest errors of RFID is that perhaps if the truck is too near the facility, it can read that maybe some of the tags or the RFIDs are still in the facility when they're already departed. So in this case, all the measurements of the RFID need to be done properly in order to really manage it properly. Okay, very good. So in this case, when we have, like I said, the information systems infrastructure, we have to make sure that all the information flows. If the information doesn't flow, we have data silos, and that is very, very troublesome. Again, we have to standardize the data, we have to make sure that happens, but that often doesn't happen, and very, very often doesn't work well. If you want to look for data silos as an extra rating for you, that is fantastic, because you will understand a little bit more and the problems that companies have with it. So in this one, yeah, again, well, in this case, we can talk about also about managing partnerships, which in this case we will use also technology to understand, and we will have different levels of infrastructure integration. So when we're talking about maybe some small projects, we just share some small amount of information, but when we're talking about long-term relationships, perhaps we will have much sharing of information systems, etc. So anyways, that one is explained in a very different way in here, but is something that you have to look at, as I say, like I said, in this case, depending on the project, on the level of integration that we need, is the amount of information that we will share. Very good. So that's it for today. Thank you so much, and then I'll see you next week. If you have any questions, please let me know.